This video is going to be my reaction to the Detroit Lions 45-31 loss to the Washington Commanders in the NFC Divisional round. A shocking loss Saturday night that took me some time to try to evaluate and decompress for you. I will offer you some thoughts as to reasons why as we get throughout the video. To forfeit this season the way the Lions did, I never would have guessed that. I never would have certainly predicted it. We did know, we all knew, recognized that the defense was severely understaffed in terms of talent the further along that the season went. Losing Meek Robertson early just made things even worse, especially the way that he had played lately as an outside corner. But this was not the Detroit Lions team that you've watched in 2024 and 2023, for that matter, and even the second half of 2022. Just bore very little resemblance to that physical, tough-minded team that I think was generally willing to work the ball downfield and be patient and then unleash a trick play or something anomalous at a place and time of their choosing. Really no preparedness on the defensive side of the ball. Allowed the Washington Commanders to run essentially the same plays they've run on film with very little adjustments, at least to me. I think that you have to give Aaron Glenn credit for what the defense was able to get accomplished this year with so many guys out. Were this defense to be totally healthy, they're as good as anyone in the league from a top 5 standpoint. That's not the guys that were on the field tonight. Clearly, that played a factor. I still think there's a level of preparedness that was not there, particularly with respect to how Jaden Daniels, obviously he's a right-handed quarterback, but when it comes down to fourth down plays, even third down plays for that matter, Washington is a right-handed football team. Witness how often the ball was on the right hash tonight for Washington's offense, and they still were calling those third and fourth down plays into the boundary. On the other side of the ball, where I'm going to spend most of my time talking about and analyzing, the offensive play calling was incredibly impatient. I thought really lacked a forthright plan. It really is revealed with 2 situations. One on the third possession, and then Jamison Williams, the reverse attempted pass, that ends up being intercepted. I think Jahmyr Gibbs early in the game is absolutely the best player on the field. Actually, he's the best player on the field for the entirety of the game for both teams. But he's just tearing up Washington's defense downhill or angled run concepts. To go away from him on that third possession when you're ahead 7-3 with the ball, in fact, I think just inside their red zone, 18-yard line, that to me is just dereliction of duty from a Ben Johnson standpoint. I think it's either his worst game as an offensive play caller or second worst. And I'm talking about Carolina 2022 on the road, a pretty poor loss down there if you ask me. I support Dan Campbell in pretty much everything he does. I think he's done a fantastic job in Detroit. But there is no excuse for the 4th and goal in the fourth quarter, I believe, early fourth quarter, maybe late third, when the Lions fail to call a timeout and are penalized with having 12 men on the field. All 3 of the guys in charge of this team, Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, they deserve the criticism that they're going to get. They get paid millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases for the responsibilities that they have. There's no excuse to have 12 players on the field, not when you have that much staff, not in that situation. Look, I get it. I understand what the Commanders do. They sub without huddling, and I'll address that a little bit later. But there's just no excuse in my opinion. It gave Washington a first down. They turned it into another short touchdown run in the second half, or in the third quarter, maybe early fourth, ended up winning 45-31. For Detroit's season to end in this manner, shocking, probably going to take most of us, especially hardcore Detroit Lions fans, a long time to decompress from. I don't know, maybe it's shorter because the amount of time that the Detroit Lions under Dan Campbell have been at the highest level of the NFL is considered to be such a short time period. Last year losing in the NFC Championship game, this year losing at home in the divisional round. I'm going to offer you a theory as to how all this happens to a team that went 15-2. And despite all the injuries on defense, I think if these 2 teams were to play next week and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn don't spend however many hours of their time preparing and conducting interviews with other NFL franchises, I pick the Detroit Lions. They could line up tomorrow. I pick the Detroit Lions. Goff throwing 3 interceptions, Jameson Williams throwing one in the second half. I think it's an unforgivable play call by Ben Johnson there. One of three really perplexing, also disappointing play calls by him. I thought the defense, like I said, did a really poor job of dealing with the option game that the Commanders present. There's a refusal to adjust in the third quarter. They did get one stop to open the third quarter. That was pretty much it. The bubbles, options, screens, I mean, occasionally you got a drag or over concept. Really limited offense from the standpoint of an NFL passing concepts that Jaden Daniels is asked to execute. I'm not in line. Played a really good game tonight. He's had a great rookie season. He gets to play football next week, but you're going to have to forgive me for not just jumping in line with everybody else to proclaim Jaden Daniels as the greatest quarterback that there is, or one of them, until I see him actually executing passing concepts. He does a great job in the option, but the Lions really never forced him to do anything that so many other quarterbacks are asked to do. Over routes, bubbles, screens, drag concepts. Pretty much it. I'm going to have to see a little bit more than that before I get in line with everybody else. But the Commanders get the win tonight. Look, they needed 5 turnovers to do it. They also ran for 182 yards of offense. I know that Detroit's defense, from a health standpoint, if they're totally healthy and everybody's out on the field, they're not going to give up almost 200 yards rushing. But at one point, if you look at it this way from a Washington standpoint, it's 3-0 turnover margin in favor of the Commanders, and that's happening at a point in time when the Lions have the ball down 10 in the third quarter. It took all of that for Washington to ruin what, could have been a historic season for the Lions. The injuries, I think, are a huge factor. They could have made the season even more historic if you're able to get to a Super Bowl or win one. I have to tell you, I see some very clear similarities in this loss and the Ravens' 2019 season. That's Lamar Jackson's first year as a starter. They go 14-2, lose at home to the Titans in the division round. I'll explain my full thought there a little bit later because it involves coaches interviewing while the season is still going on, and I recognize that people will call me naive. Well, I would say that you might be naive if you don't recognize that there might be some correlation or even causality between both of your coordinators interviewing for multiple jobs in the NFL, and in the case of Ben Johnson, maybe already having agreed to something. I don't know. I could have it backwards. Maybe it's Aaron Glenn. You may be naive if you don't think that that's a factor. One bright spot for this one, obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs is a superstar. He was the best player on the field tonight. Best weapon by far. I get it. In this day and age, people are going to say, well, how is the quarterback of the winning team not the best player in your opinion? Jahmyr Gibbs is the best player. He's the guy that I would pick to start my offense with if I had to pick the guys to start with tonight, just the players that were on the field with tonight. He put up 175 yards of offense. He was taking over at times tonight, particularly in the first half. And that's where I'll begin my analysis, unfortunately, on the third possession. Detroit had took a 7-0 lead on their second drive. Gibbs had runs of 14 and 9. He had a 24-yard catch, and he capped it with a 2-yard touchdown run. The point was clear for me at that moment. They can't stop him, particularly on downhill stuff, letting the offensive line combo up to people, whether it's inside zone or outside zone. A lot of the split zone stuff or counter were slower developing plays. I didn't like that. I liked getting Gibbs downhill now to the line of scrimmage, and Washington just had no answer. In this situation, they were able to get a field goal on their second drive, Washington that is, to close to 7-3. And then Detroit's third drive, they get Laporta for a 14-yard catch. I thought that was a matchup that could have been exploited more. He was open, huge matchup edge, if you ask me. I thought Goff left him hanging a few times, including the pick six, actually. Laporta is open. It is a 2nd and 14. But in any case, back to this third possession. Laporta, a 14-yard catch. Gibbs, a 33-yard run. Laporta, another 6-yard catch on a play action. Now, this was with Gibbs and Montgomery on the field. This is a 1st and 10 from near to the Commanders' red zone, near to their 20-yard line. I think maybe the 24, something like that. Gibbs and Montgomery on the field together. I think Ben Johnson's starting to get a little cute because Gibbs goes in motion, and I get it. You're trying to use his gravity, fool the defense into overreacting. Me personally, at the time and right now, it's 7-3. Give him the ball. It's not 21-3 yet. Could have been, or it could have been 14-3, I guess, in this case. They don't. Montgomery gets the run opposite Gibbs. on a short run to the left. There's a 2nd and 4, I believe. And then the play of the game is this 3rd and 2. I get it. It's only the first quarter, so how can it be the play of the game? It's 3rd and 2. Gibbs is killing him. And what does Ben Johnson do? He lines him up in empty. I just don't know. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. There seems to be a level of impatience by Ben Johnson and Goff tonight. Goff ends up stripped on the play. Real gift bailing out Washington's defense. Basically, they didn't have to tackle Gibbs again. Even on this night when they got 5 turnovers, Washington still gave up 200 yards rushing on 23 carries. I think you've got a situation where Ben Johnson deserves all the criticism he's going to get, and maybe even more. This turnover out of empty is a Goff's fault, the offensive line for not protecting. Cool, man. Blame all those guys if you want to. But for me, I want to see Jahmyr Gibbs get the ball. If you want to get cute, if you want to do other things when it's 21-3 or 21-10, in this case, go right ahead. In any case, Washington responds after getting the ball. They went on an extremely long drive. They converted a 4th down to Ertz. Ertz was wide open against a blitz. For me, it's just shocking to see him like threaten out routes or towards the sideline. He's just not going to beat the level of athletes that's defending him, the safeties for the Lions. They kept letting him put his foot in the ground and cross their face back across the middle. It's like, guys, he's not going to outrun you to the sideline, whether it's Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, Melifonwu. In any case, that was a nice conversion by Washington. I think Jaden Daniels found him pretty quickly. Also on that drive, there's a 3rd and goal where I think the refs maybe bailed out Terry McLaurin. Maybe McLaurin falls to sell the play. I don't know. It's a poorly thrown ball by Jaden Daniels, who I thought had 3 balls in the first half that were short, that were poorly thrown, which is unusual because 2 of his deeper throws were extremely accurate. Witness the one that he threw that Kirby tried to challenge, I think in the second quarter, on like a post concept, and Kirby just can't get there. It's a great throw, perfectly placed by Jaden Daniels, but 3 of his worst throws were underneath of like 6 or 7 yards. Really weird. But in any case, that one to McLaurin I thought was poorly thrown out in front. Joseph grabs a little bit. Maybe there's more contact than I think. Gives them a 1st and goal. They're able to score, I think, to make it 10-3. Back to the play call by Ben Johnson, the empty pass play on 3rd and 2. That took away the initiative. What did Washington do tonight on offense? They forced you to defend Jaden Daniels in the option. Forced you to defend the running backs out of the option. Jahmyr Gibbs was the best weapon on the field from a talent and individual standpoint. On a critical 3rd and 2, I think Ben Johnson should have recognized the concepts that were working and said, we're going to make them tackle him. You may not have as strong of feelings about that play call as I do. I think Ben Johnson left a lot of points on the field tonight, and Jared Goff was a big factor as well. To me, basically, do what's working. Make them stop it. Ben Johnson seemed to tonight be a guy who was like, okay, this worked the first time. Now I'm going to do something off of it to get overreaction to the first concept we used. Make them defend the first play another time. Make them stop it before you move on to something else. I'm not saying run it 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a row. Here's the unfortunate thing about it. On the Lions' next possession, they took over down 10-7. They go right down the field and score to take a 14-10 lead in the second quarter. You had Laporta's diving catch in the back of the end zone, if you recall, to put them up 14-10. And then things got crazy, obviously. The Commanders scored in 3 plays. McLaurin is, Detroit's woefully outflanked. Branch is on a blitz. I think it's Branch. And McLaurin, it's a 3-on-2 out there. So you don't have requisite numbers to defend it. You just can't call blitzes and then run the defenses on the field irrespective of the formation and the way that receivers are lined up, especially against this offense. It's a very horizontal attack. Jaden Daniels, on a lot of these plays, it's an option read. So if there's numbers over there, he's just going to throw it. It's very college-esque, obviously. So it's a 70-yard plus touchdown for McLaurin, zipping down the left sideline. And then Goff responds with throwing a pick 6. I don't even know who Martin, the DB, is. It's a really poor throw. Laporta's open underneath the zone. It's a 2nd and 14. So I get it. Goff wants more. And again, this is hungry, impatience, if you ask me. To me, Laporta looks open for at least a 5, 6, 7-yard gain. He's open underneath the zone. Laporta's really good at catching the ball, turning, and getting an extra 2 or 3 yards. In any case, it's a high throw to a receiver down the left sideline. I think it's Martin, like I said. returns the high throw for a 40-yard touchdown. It's 24-14 with 6.5 minutes left in the second quarter. For me already at that point, I'm thinking, you better score here because Washington gets the ball to open the third quarter. And some of the guys in the Lions Discord didn't like my, I guess you call it pessimism. I was just being realistic. I'm big on that turnaround, late second quarter, early third quarter. For me, this was shocking because Goff was impatient. And I think his level of impatience kind of matched or mirrored some of the play calls that Ben Johnson made. Goff actually got hurt on that pick six. I think it was Frankie Lavu. Could have been called for a penalty, maybe helmet to helmet. I don't know, whatever. Personally, I wouldn't even want Goff trying to challenge inside the 5-yard line unless the game is on the line. But again, that third possession kind of trickled into playing from behind. Goff ends up pressing. And yeah, I get it. Bridgewater comes in. Jameson Williams scores on, I think, a 61-yard reverse. It's a cool moment. Great concept. Detroit's able to pull within 24-21. I think 4 minutes left. Now, Washington made it 31-21 in the second quarter. And then Goff, I think, again pressing, tries to find Williams in the end zone. Last minute of the first half. I think like 26 seconds. Maybe it's 31. I believe Sane Restol was the guy with the interception there, but I could be wrong. Look, could Jameson Williams make an adjustment on that ball? Yes. Or could he at least make an attempt to get to the football so that the DB can't undercut it? Sure. But Goff's making a poor throw there. That ball's underthrown, number one. Or it could be thrown away from the defender, horizontal, more to the left. But I think really what's even worse is the decision to attempt it. It shows to me, it reveals for me at least, that Goff and Ben Johnson, whatever it was born out of, were extremely impatient tonight. Not willing to just let their playmakers make plays down the field, which they were capable of, in my opinion. Gibbs, Laporta, I think, was a huge mismatch. The impatience of those guys is a key element for this loss. I recognize that there's going to be people that focus on the defense, right? Aaron Glenn's defense got wrecked, clearly, by the option. They did. They did get a stop to open the third quarter, but by and large, they really had difficulty stopping Jaden Daniels and the option game. The running backs actually hurt him more than we thought maybe they would. I think Brian Robinson runs for 77 yards. Still in the third quarter, Gibbs caps an 11-play drive, 91 yards, in fact, to get within 31-28. If you remember, the punt to set up that drive by Washington literally hits at the 2, maybe the 2.5, and kicks backwards. Very weird to see that. It was like, wow, everything's going to be difficult tonight for the Lions. And sure enough, they go 91 yards. Gibbs, I think an 8-yard touchdown run to get within 31-28. On the drive, Montgomery had an 11-yard run. St. Brown had 2 catches, I think one for 19 and one for 20. And like I said, they get within 3 points. Washington's able to convert a 4th down, 4th and 1 that was extremely disappointing. Terrion Arnold gave up outside position as a corner. Just too easy. Again, Washington is a right-handed football team on these 4th down and 3rd down situations. I analyze the game like from my home, okay? I'm a one-man army in terms of the way that I attack this. I study as much film as I can, but I'm one person. Even I know that they're a right-handed team in those situations. The Detroit Lions coaching staff, their players, they get paid a shit ton of money to play a game and to know these things and to be prepared in those moments. They were not. Terrion Arnold was not prepared. Is it his fault completely? Is it Aaron Glenn's fault completely? The DB coach? A little bit of both or all three? Anyway, that mistake could be split among multiple guys, sure. But the next one, it's on the coaches. I think it's 4th and 2. Washington's going to go for it inside the 5-yard line. And it's still only 31-28 at this point. It's an opportunity for the Lions. I mean, you get a stop here. You can score a touchdown and win the game when, for parts of the second quarter and the third, it looked like, how are you going to get this done? That's a terrible situation, man. Washington gets the first down after 12 men on the field. Robinson punches it in, right? And this situation is partially caused maybe by the way Washington runs their offense. They don't huddle, but they sub. And the college game is really struggling with this right now. And tonight, I saw this actually between plays. In at least one situation, a tight end was running on the field and then running back off. That can't happen. Here's what I mean. Your defense, you're trying to match personnel. Okay, if they go out there with, let's say, no tight ends, and one running back. Maybe you put your dime look on the field. If they go out there with two running backs and three tight ends, extreme situation here. Maybe you're in your goal line look. The point is, if you're not huddling, there has to be some type of mechanism that allows the defense to match. Early in the game, it didn't seem like the Lions were willing to do something that I would say was the nuclear option. It looked like to me mid-second quarter, the Lions defense started huddling when Washington subbed without huddling. You can, feel free to let me know if you saw it in a different manner, but I saw situations where guys for Washington were running on from multiple locations on the field. So what I mean is, from my experience, the way we were trained at least, it's going to be behind the offense. But sometimes it's not possible given the location of the ball on the field. I saw one player run on from like near to the line of scrimmage or almost behind, and then another player, maybe a receiver or someone, run on like 10 yards down the field. There has to be a better mechanism for me, unless I saw it wrong, and feel free to let me know if you're aware of a rule that prohibits what I'm describing. And again, I don't think that's the factor that we, as Lions fans, people rooting for the Lions, that we should use to complain about the 12 men on the field. I'm mentioning it because I have a personal experience with it from either dealing with unorganized teams sending guys on the field and you don't know who the hell's on or off, and they're actually subbing at the last second, and the defense isn't given an opportunity to sub. In college bowl games this year, it was a big talking point for 2 or 3 days. Teams were kind of slow running their match on the field, whether it was a defensive lineman, a safety, whatever. I don't know how to mitigate that. I'm not saying that it was what led to the 12 men on the field. There was some chaos created throughout the game, and Detroit's coaches, A, didn't handle it well, having 12 men on the field, and then B, why don't you just call a timeout? Just call a timeout because it's such a critical situation. I do think Washington's doing it intentionally. I do think there's a slight bending of the rules there. I don't know how, that'll be dealt with, but look, at that moment, 4th and 2, down 31-28, they're inside your 5-yard line. It can't be overstated for me how big of a failure that is on, the head coach, the defensive coordinator, the entire defensive staff. You knew that they were going to do this. You knew they were going to sub without huddling. And in that situation, how you end up with 12 on the field is beyond me. I think it's 12 personnel. And at the moment that even Brady, it sounded like, who I think is a little bit of a space cadet sometimes when he's commented on the game, for being such a brilliant football player and absolute winner as a quarterback. Even Brady was like, hey, they should call timeout. I believe he was talking about Detroit, but I could be wrong. In any case, look, that one's 38-28. That's dereliction of duty on the defensive staff and the head coach. The ensuing possession, this is all on Ben Johnson. This play, I don't think this play can occur when you have this much talent on the field. So down 38-28, take possession of the ball. Again, I think it's early fourth quarter, maybe 13 minutes left. Tim Patrick has just gained 22 yards on a pass over the middle from Jared Goff. He stiff-armed 2 defenders, I think one of which was Frankie Lavu, who's a massive athlete, very big and strong, so that was, quite impressive. Lions had a 1st and 10 near midfield and the reverse pass to Jamison Williams. I think they were setting this one up maybe a few games ago. Perhaps it was the Vikings in Week 18, where it looked like it was going to be a reverse and then it wasn't. But look, to this point, here's what's happened offensively. And Ben Johnson has to have a sense of this. You're down 10. 8 possessions. This is actually the 9th, but the previous 8 possessions, you've got 4 touchdowns, 1 legitimate punt, 2 interceptions by Goff, and the strip sack on the 3rd possessions, which I would blame Ben Johnson for, along with whatever offensive lineman, couldn't pass protect. This play call stinks. The one on the 3rd possession stunk. This one's worse, in my opinion. I guess because it didn't work out. I'm going to be protective of Jamison Williams. I wouldn't want to put him in that situation regardless of who he was. Regardless. But Jamison Williams has never thrown a pass in college or the NFL, to my knowledge. Hey, run the reverse again, Ben. Like, there's an idea. Or, Gibbs had been slicing them downhill on defense. It's a 1st and 10. It's a 1st and 10. You just gained 22 yards to Tim Patrick. St. Brown sounds like a great option to me. Here, think there's like 12:40 left, maybe 12:45 left in the fourth quarter when you snap the ball down 10. I think Ben Johnson should have to answer for it. You get paid, a lot of money to be the offensive coordinator in Detroit. At that point, the Lions are in the game. And we knew the defense was going to struggle. Anybody who's honest with themselves knew that the defense was going to struggle at times with the option game. It's not Jaden Daniels, it's the option game that they're going to struggle with. Jaden Daniels adds to it. 10%, 15%, 20% effectiveness, whatever, he adds to it. It's the option game. If they came in here with no option plays and Jaden Daniels just as a drop back quarterback who occasionally scrambled, there'd be a certain level of danger to that. Yes, I agree. But the option concepts being utilized with an athletic quarterback in that manner is what adds to it. We knew they were going to struggle with that. And I get it. Washington fans are going to, and probably already are, dunking on Detroit's defense, right? They shouldn't know how many injuries the Lions have suffered, the devastation they've suffered on that side of the ball, right? They pay attention to their team. But what is Ben Johnson's excuse? What's Jared Goff's excuse? This is a colossal failure in what those guys have accomplished, and it comes at the worst time. It really, if you could separate it out, you're not going to be able to do this. I can't either. And look at the totality or the body of work, you're just going to be amazed. But unfortunately, if Ben Johnson signs with the Raiders on Tuesday, which is what I predict, then this is the last experience that Lions fans get with him. It's very unfortunate. Look, was there other issues, right? Christian Mahogany misses a big block on the first play of the game, maybe second play of the game. The pass pro issues at times. Yeah, Jameson Williams adjusting to the ball in the end zone. Sure. I mean, he only had one catch for 19 yards tonight. And I'm also fine if someone in the chat or Lions fan wants to focus on Aaron Glenn's defense. They got shredded by a mobile quarterback again. Go ahead. That's no problem. I won't disagree. But for me, let's do it this way. What if the offense had no St. Brown? That's your Aiden Hutchinson. No Jahmyr Gibbs. Laporta was nursing an injury. And 2 starting offensive linemen were out for the year. To me, that would be comparable to what the Lions defense has been dealing with. A lack of talent as the season has developed. So, and now look, do I think Aaron Glenn could have put his guys in better position at times? Yes. I think there was times tonight where they were not beat because of ability. They were beat because they were just not in the proper position to defend plays that were on film. But Ben Johnson and the offense, they don't have that excuse. They don't. I guess we'll get to some of it in a minute, the preparedness part. Washington, went down to score again, made it 45-28. They converted another 4th and 2 in the process, about 7:30 left. It's pretty much over at that point. Goff did throw another interception after they had got to 45-31. I wondered if Detroit would just kick a field goal as soon as they were in field goal range to get to 45-31 and retain as much time as possible in the game. They kind of used up an extra minute and 45, maybe 2 minutes, I thought. Because, at that point, you need 3 scores anyway, down 45-21. But here's what I really want to talk. Actually, let me be forthright. I really don't want to talk about this, but I think I kind of have to. I have this theory that teams who have both coordinators interview for jobs, and I mean multiple jobs, just not 1 or 2, experience a reduced efficiency, reduced level of performance. And the only 2 that I can refer to is this Lions team in 2024 that was 15-2, and the Ravens in 2019 that were 14-2. And both of those teams had both coordinators interviewed for multiple jobs, not 1 or 2 each, but in some cases 3 or 4. And look, the Ravens team that lost, they lost to the Titans who had Derrick Henry. So it's a Hall of Fame running back. This Washington team does not have that. They do not have that type of pure, unadulterated talent that can dominate a game. This loss reminds me of that because I know Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson interviewed for multiple jobs. I get it. That's the process. But you made your choice. And as I said earlier in the lead-in, I'm curious. I don't have access to this data. I guess I'll have to research it. How many times a home team in the playoffs has had coordinators interview for jobs and then come out and stunk like this on both sides? As a comparison point, Cliff Kingsbury apparently told teams he would not interview until the season was over. Now, would that cost him a job? Possibly. Is it related to the fact that the Arizona Cardinals are still paying him a head coach salary? Sure. I'm sure it is. Also, they had to play last week, so when would he do that? The Lions coaches presumably would have done that last week during their bye. I get it. But you're still coaching this team. And all I know is Cliff Kingsbury gets to coach his offense next week. Ben Johnson doesn't. This is my theory, or my inquiry, my thought, that maybe interviewing for teams interrupts your workflow in a way that causes reduced performance. I can't prove it, obviously, and I might be wrong. I'm fine with that. Again, I don't have access to a whole sports department or a newsroom. I'm a one-person gig here. But I'm thinking about my own experiences in coaching. I would hate for anyone to talk to me about next year's job while I'm still coaching this one. Additional to that, let's flip it a little bit. What if it was a player? What if it was a player being courted by a rival team during the season? Hey, Jalen Hurts, I know you've got a bye this week. Can we do a Zoom meeting to talk about your willingness to be our quarterback next year? I know you're playing the Rams this week, but this will only take an hour. And look, it's not an hour, right? For an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator to possibly move into a head coach role, it's not an hour. They're going to test you. They're going to ask you questions, and they're in some cases going to make you wait and feel a little uncomfortable to see how you respond to it. There's also prep for the interview. There's also side prep, in terms of when am I going to do this interview, presumably on a Zoom, while balancing my other duties, which they would have duties in a bye week situation. I get it that you may disagree with it. Would you like to have your guys interview? Yes or no? Given how it's worked out now, I get the benefit of asking that now, and the reason why I feel like my perspective is unique and my inquiry into it at least is worthy of my own investigation is because I've now gone through this with two different teams: the Ravens in 2019. And now the Lions in 2024. For me, it's shocking that this is accepted practice. Because again, if a player did it, they would be in trouble. I think in the NBA they call it collusion, right? But the coaches are still under contract with their teams, and so I get it. People are going to say, "Coach, it's just the way it is." You don't know anything about the game and the business of football at that level. I know what Cliff Kingsbury said, and I know this: he gets to coach next week. What if he wins next week? What if he wins the next two games? You think Cliff Kingsbury won't get interviews for a coaching job if no one's hired their coach yet? If he wins the Super Bowl, or if he wins and gets to the Super Bowl? I guess another question to ask is, are you happy with the turnout, with the result? Clearly not, right? Maybe you don't see it's related. I do. I think the vibe was off with this team tonight. I didn't see the same Lions team that I expected to see and that I have seen in 2024, 2023, and the second half of 2022. That team, the one I'm referring to, swamps this Washington team and moves on to the NFC Championship next week. I get it. Commanders fans probably aren't listening this long. They don't like that, I'm sure. If they are, it wouldn't surprise me if Ben Johnson and or Aaron Glenn has already made a decision, and somehow in the organization there's awareness of it, because this looked like a ragged team tonight to me. The flow of things on offense was off. The defense's inability to adjust. It looked like an unprepared team, and that's not the Detroit Lions. That's not Dan Campbell's Detroit Lions. That's part of the reason why it took me so long to get this reaction video out, because I didn't want to say what I just said, which is the Detroit Lions lost not looking like themselves. I'm not sure about you, but it's even weird listening to Tom Brady talk about the game, because I'm sure he was heavily involved in recruiting Ben Johnson. Tom Brady's the part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. It's kind of difficult to reconcile that the conflict of interest is allowed to exist there and, in fact, promoted. The fake manner in which the announcer asked him about it, it felt like that moment when they asked him about it felt like some of you aren't going to get it. Baghdad Bob in Iraq. Oh, the Americans are not here when our tanks are rolling past him behind the screen. It just broadcast felt inauthentic from that point on, not to mention 350 commercials in the first half alone. The product tonight that the Lions put out, for me, was only matched by the broadcast quality that the NFL was willing to sign off on with the number of commercials. It's just extremely diluted, and then Brady and those guys felt really rehearsed and fake. In any case, my final thought is I think one or both of those guys has already agreed to something, and now, unfortunately, we're going to get an announcement within 48 or 72 hours of this one. I may have it backwards. Maybe only one of them does or none. Something seemed off with this Lions team tonight, and that was very unexpected for me. Really can't believe that that's the outcome that we got, losing to this Commanders team, a good football team, but not one that should be able to get 5 turnovers against Ben Johnson and Jared Goff's offense. Those two, if you ask me, really are the tip of the spear in execution, and their inability to do so tonight, and their impatience, and then Goff's turnovers, caused me to be less than impressed with the Commanders and more just really disappointed with the Detroit Lions, because they had dismantled so many good defenses in the last 2 years, and Ben Johnson and Jared Goff and those guys came out tonight and just shit the bed. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you sat this long through the video, thank you. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy, or at least want to listen to my perspective on the game and what happened, and maybe some of the reasons why I speculate that it occurred, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.